Hi, I'm Heather from Here Booktubes, and today is my May wrap-up. So in May, I read 27 books. I DNF'd 4 of them, and so I'm going to talk about 23. As always, I will be going in chronological order. If the books are available in Kindle Unlimited, they are marked in my description, and all the books are listed and linked there for your convenience. I would say that this was not really a typical reading month. I read a lot of the same authors, and there are quite a few regular authors in my rotation that didn't really appear. So the very first book that I read was The Midnight Bride, which is The Deadlands #2 by Kati Wilde. I read the first book, which is The Midwinter Mail Order Bride, last year and adored it. These are fantasy romance novellas. And this one I gave 4 stars. It is a competition where they are trying to retrieve a gauntlet almost of power, and nobody ever survives, and the hero, it's his job, his sworn vow, to prevent anybody from misusing it, and she's trying to win it, so they are at odds. It is a barbarian warrior style, over-the-top alpha with a noblewoman who is toughened by the circumstances of the competition, and it's a novella, smutty. It was good. This was recommended to me by Mara from Books Like Whoa, and she had said specifically that if you really enjoyed A Heart, Blood, and Ashes by Mia Levine, which is one of my favorite books of the year so far, then she would recommend this series. I had already read the first one a while ago and continued. I do plan on reading the third one soon. Then I read Magic Shifts, which is Kate Daniels' #8 by Ilona Andrews. This has been on my TBR for forever. Back a couple years ago, before I started BookTube, I read a ton of Ilona Andrews books, basically back to back, and or like something like 20-ish of them in like a couple of months, and then eventually got burned out and went for quicker, more romance-focused books. But I have finally picked it back up. There are 10 books in the Kate Daniels series, and I'm hoping to finish soon. So this was book #8. I, of course, gave it 5 stars. Kate is a mercenary who purposely hides her level of power and is a middle-of-the-road mercenary, and Curran is the Beast Lord, the Lord of the Shifters. He is a lion shifter, and they have a romance. This is more focused on the world and the power and the plots and mysteries that they have to solve, but their relationship is a prevalent part that starts in like book 3 or 4 more so, but they meet in book 1 and are there. It's just not as heavily focused. In book 8, one of the friends are missing. Curran is trying to get Kate to marry him, and things are escalating. I can't really tell you more than that, but I'm looking forward to finishing the series. Then I read The Beginning of Everything, which is The Rising #1 by Kristen Ashley. I gave this book 4 stars. This is a fantasy romance series where there are 4 couples who are destined to be together by fate in order to stop the rising of the great beast who almost killed everybody the last time he was awake. So the couples know, and they are having marriages of convenience in order to create the magic to defeat the beast. However, they are not aware that the magic is actually found in their love for each other, so they are not fostering feelings and things are having problems. It's a very odd style, so if you don't already like Kristen Ashley, I would not start with this one. And there are many points of view. Not only are there points of view of each and every member of the couples, so that's 8 people, there are also many points of view from side characters, either as one-offs or a reoccurring sided character's point of view. Every chapter is a different point of view, and these are not standalone. So the first book ends on the cliffhanger, and it's just very odd. It also opens up with the sacrifice of a virgin after she is raped. So there are content warnings right away. There are other content warnings. But yeah, if you're not already a fan of fantasy romance, if you haven't already read fantasy books with multiple points of view, and you're not already a fan of Kristen Ashley, I don't recommend this book to you, but I did enjoy it. Then I read Games of the Heart, which is the Burg #4 by Kristen Ashley. I gave this book 5 stars. It was very emotional and deals a lot with grief. It opens up at her brother's funeral, and we get the hero's point of view first. He messes up several times in this book. He does grovel, he does make up for it, but the very first thing that he does is messing up, and then he does it again, and then he does it again. This has content warnings for sexual assault and death of a loved one, and I can't remember what else. It also focuses not only on the main couple romance, which he had dated her sister back when they were like teenagers, and she was always in love with him, and they had a falling out and haven't spoken in years. like I said, he messes up right away, right after the funeral of her brother, and her brother's widow is kind of checked out, and her teenage boys are trying to do a farm on their own, and so the main character moves back to help her family, and they have a romance where he messes up several times and has to grovel, but also you get the romance of the older son, which would be her nephew, and it's very sweet too. It was an emotional book and I did really enjoy it. You can read it as a standalone. I think it makes a little bit more sense if you've read at least one or two other books in the series. It's emotional and sweet. Then I read The Duke Who Didnt, which is Wedgeford Trials #1 by Courtney Milan. This is my first ever book by Courtney Milan, and I'm happy that I finally picked her up. I was pleasantly surprised by several things in this book where what I thought would happen didn't happen, and I really liked the outcome instead. I gave this book 5 stars. This is about a half-Chinese duke in England, and specifically a town called Wedgeford, and they have the Wedgeford Trials, which is almost like a festival, a game that happens every year. The duke has been coming since he was a boy, but he hasn't been the last 3 years, and the girl that he left behind is not happy with him about that. She is very type A. She enjoys making lists and kind of takes the whole weight of the world on her shoulders. He is desperately in love with her and doesn't know how to convince her that he is, and so he is trying to get her to make a list with all the perfect attributes for a wife for him while trying to get her to understand that he wants her. And there are quite a few things in here that I really enjoyed the way that Courtney Milan did it. The main character is, I believe, fully Chinese, but has lived in England either all of her life or most of her life. I just really enjoyed it. And there was a scene in here the morning after. I was crying laughing. It was just so funny. Then I read The Iron Duke, which is The Iron Seas #1 by Meljean Brook. This is another pen name for the author Milan, who wrote Heart of Blood and Ashes. I gave this book 5 stars, so this is a bit confusing. There's a zombie outbreak. I'm not 100% sure why. And then there's also nanobots, which were used by the Horde, basically the Mongolian Horde, to control people, specifically the English, but it was more than that. But we're focused in England. We're taking place in London. And the Iron Duke saved them. He blew up the tower that was controlling people with its frequencies and saved them, and that's how he became a duke. He was a pirate. Well, our main character is an inspector, and she crosses paths with the duke when a dead body is dumped on his doorstep, and she's called to investigate. He is very taken with her, and she doesn't want to have anything to do with him. There is quite a bit of racism towards Asians in this book. So xenophobia, and so you should be aware of that. It is mixed amongst other prejudices, such as the people who have the nanobots in their blood are at odds with the people who do not. And there are many other things, but specifically because the Horde was in charge and could control people, there's a lot of animosity and violence and prejudice against anybody who looks Asian. The Horde could create frenzies, mating frenzies, where you were turned on uncontrollably, and that was how she was conceived. So she was conceived by an unknown member of the Horde and her mother, and so that is also a prevalent theme in the book. It's not graphically described or anything, but you should be aware of that for a content warning. It's them kind of trying to figure out who killed this body and what is going on. Also, the consent in this is not great, and there are a couple missteps for sure. And so, again, be aware of that. I did really enjoy their banter. I liked the mystery. I liked the world. I just really enjoyed it. Then I read Relationship Goals, which is a novella by Christina C. Jones. I gave this 4 stars. The main character is in the airport when she sees that this guy got coffee spilled on him. She goes and helps him. He kisses her epically and then goes and catches his plane. This is captured by somebody in a photo and they go viral on social media. They find each other through social media and they connect. However, there is some angst because he has a chronic illness, and because of that, he thinks that nobody will stay with him, and he has a hard time letting her in and trusting that she's there for the long haul. She also has to deal with the fact that he's not always okay, and she can't automatically make him better. and I really enjoyed it a lot. There was something kind of missing for me in their connection there at the beginning, but by the end I did really care about their relationship. And I liked that the male love interest was the one with the chronic illness, because I don't see that very often. Then I read Finders Keepers by C.A. Rose. This is a novella by Aurora Rose Reynolds under a pen name. I gave it 3 stars. It was very alpha. He finds her outside of his property. She's like twisted her ankle and her car is broken down and all of the things. And there's some other woman drama, even though there isn't other woman drama. It's just a misunderstanding, but it's just an alpha over the top novella. Then I read Dark Fae by Carolyn Peckham. I give this 3 stars. This is a reverse harem academy, although I think it might have been college academy, something like that. Paranormal romance, and it was too long. Was my main takeaway from it. Our main character is a vampire, and her love interests are a basilisk, a lion, a dragon, and a harpy. The basilisk and the dragon are heads of opposing gangs there at this school, and there's a lot of altercations between the gangs. She's there to try and find out who killed her brother. She knows it's the king of the school. But there's 4 kings of the school, the guys that she's interested in, and she doesn't know which one it was. I thought that the plot was really obvious. There are a lot of content warnings for child abuse and loss of a loved one, and I also thought it was repetitive. So basically it was just too long. You should have cut out a lot of the repetitiveness and things, and it would have been better. Then I read Magic Stars, which is Kate Daniels' 8.5 by Ilona Andrews. I gave this 5 stars. This is under 100 pages. It is a novella that follows Julie and Derek, who you are familiar with if you have read the series. And there are a couple of important things that happened, and that's why I read it. Sorry if I'm teary-eyed. I had a coughing fit. Also, I love these main characters. I really just want them to be happy. Then I read Kidnapping the Bride by Isla Chu. This is a Jessica King style short smutty novella over the top. I gave it 3 stars. He is a member of the Yakuza, which is a Japanese gang and kind of like the mafia. And there is some Chinese prejudice. So her family, I believe, is Chinese and is not okay with the fact that he's Japanese. But it's a second chance romance. He steals her from her wedding to another man. There's exhibitionism, smut, and persuasion by orgasm. And it was short. Then I read Always Be My Baby by Alexandria House. This is a Christmas short story. The last one of her holiday novellas that I had not read yet. I gave it 4 stars. 4 stars. Is a second chance short romance. That's really all you need to know. It's black love. It's delightful. Then I read Making Her Mine by Ella Good. I gave this book 4 stars. This is a smutty novella, and we have a powerful businessman who falls for a coffee shop owner. The coffee is giving him hives, but he won't stop going to see her and drinking the coffee, and he has to kind of rescue her from her dad, who has a gambling addiction and is ruining her life. Then I read Bait by Jade West. I said just last night in the Taboo Book Club live stream that I had not read Jade West. I read her for the first time in May. I gave it 4 stars. It is rough consensual non-consent. So if you are not already into consensual non-consent in your books, I would not recommend starting with this one. It was very rough. There's a lot of trauma surrounding miscarriage and a violent death of a loved one. And I don't think there needed to be as much trauma as there was, truth be told. I thought that the plot was unnecessary, predictable, overdramatic, and overly traumatic. But as far as the dynamic in the relationship went, I actually really enjoyed that. So basically, she is looking for someone to have consensual non-consent sex with online, and he is who she meets up with. Then I reread His Virgin Queen by Mink. I gave this 5 stars. This is a smutty over-the-top alpha novella. He kidnaps her from a wedding. He is mafia. She is a mafia princess, and he makes her his queen. He gives her power, and I enjoyed their dynamic. It's not perfect, but for what it is a very fun read. And I read The Shoutouts Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. This is a young adult fantasy romance about 2 villains. So I gave it 4 stars. It's kind of like a Cinderella retelling, but she has a plan. Her plan is to get the Shadow King to fall in love with her, marry her, and then she'll kill him and take his kingdom for herself. But somebody else is also trying to kill him, and she needs to keep him alive long enough to marry him. she killed the first boy who ever broke her heart. This is just, it's refreshing because it's two villains. It's very tropey, but the tropes are turned on their heads because you literally have the bad guys being the ones who win and you're rooting for. There's one in particular, very popular retelling of a story. I don't want to spoil it for you, but I really enjoyed the way that this was done where the villain won, and it was just funny. I just thought it was hilarious. Shadow King has power over the shadows. She is trying to kill him / marry him. He tells her that she's perfect to fake out to his council as being the one that he's courting because she's not beautiful enough to tempt him, which is a classic Pride and Prejudice line. I just thought it was fun. Predictable, but fun. Then I read The Plan Commences, which is The Rising #2 by Kristen Ashley. This is the next book in that fantasy series. It starts on chapter 43, so it really does just start where the first one ends. I gave it 4 stars. There's some interesting redemption arcs happening in this book specifically, and a twist with the beast that I was not expecting. Also in this book, you get a tie-in from her other fantasy series, which is Fantasyland. You see some of the couples from that series showing up in this book to help these couples, and we finally had some people sleep together. Halfway through this book, we got 3 of the couples finally consummating things, and yeah, I feel like if you like the first book, you'll like the second book, but again, I only recommend if you already enjoy multiple points of view fantasy stories, already enjoy Kristen Ashley's writing, and already enjoy fantasy romance. This is not one to start with. Then I read Stolen, which is Tribes #2 by Milan Jax. This is an alien alpha romance, and I recommend reading the first book first. I think the series should be read in order, although each one is a standalone about its own individual couple. A lot of things build on each other and make sense because of the context of the previous story. So this is an alien race who does not have females. Their females are either sterile or gone, and some human women have crash landed. Each have crash landed individually, so it's not like Ice Planet Barbarians where you have this whole group landing. No, it's random human woman crash landing, and they have this competition and the winner gets the female, and it's kind of elaborate. There are a lot of very over-the-top wild things happening. Honestly, if you're not already a fan of over-the-top alien romances, this series is probably not the one to start with either, but I am finding it very entertaining. I gave that book 5 stars. Then I read Shadows, which is The Darken You #5 by Suzanne Wright, and this was a huge surprise because I gave it 2 stars. Okay, so the first 4 books follow Harper and Knox. This is a demon urban fantasy romance. Knox is the most powerful demon in the world, and he has sentinels. Harper is the tattoo artist demon, and which are not connected, but that's just who she is. And she has several friends, and then some of the next pairings are the sentinels and the friends. This one is one of those. So it opens up with the main character, Chloe, already being kidnapped. We open up to her tied in a chair, and she escapes, and Tanner, when he hears about it, kind of loses his mind a little bit and is trying to keep her safe, and things are escalating between them. The problem with Chloe and Tanner being an item is that Chloe is a hellcat and Tanner is a hellhound, and they are mortal enemies, and their demons will not tolerate each other. They literally are trying to kill each other. So while Chloe and Tanner are very attracted to each other and have been for years, they've not been able to act on it because of their demons. Well, things are escalating with that. Okay, all right. The book was repetitive. I wasn't loving the storyline. I wasn't loving what was happening. I did not enjoy their banter. I thought it was odd. So we're already at a 3-star, but so her trauma specifically is that as a child, she was taken by her mentally unstable mother in a car. She was kidnapped from a birthday party, and her mom didn't know or wasn't aware or she wasn't able to recognize, I don't know, that there was a baby in the car with her, and she took her, and then she drove and drove and drove, and then ended up going in a casino, leaving them in the car for hours, and Chloe almost died and the baby did die, and she wasn't found for hours and hours until after the baby died. So she was trapped in this hot car as a 6-year-old who would have been able to escape a regular car, except that it was an incantator's car, so it's magically shielded, so she couldn't open the doors or the windows or anything. It's just horrifying. And I have never been like okay with this particular trauma. The first time I saw it on the news, I was just horrified, and honestly, it is just something that I have a hard time dealing with. And as somebody who is often responsible for having small children in your car, it is a fear to accidentally lock them in the car or any of the other possibilities. It makes me really upset, and I did not like that was the trauma. Okay, I wasn't taking a star off for that. Then in the big showdown at the end, she's hit with magic and forced to relive her worst memory, and we get pages and pages of the flashback of 6-year-old Chloe trapped in the car with the dying and dead baby. And even though I completely skimmed that and was not really reading it, I was just not okay. I was not okay with it, and I didn't like it, and it really upset me. I finished the book angry and upset, and was just not happy. That's not the only trauma that is involved in this book. The villains are both wronged. One was a victim of horrific child abuse, and another was cheated on by her partner, and I didn't like it. That's not counting the trauma that the hero has or any of the things. So while the book was repetitive and not my favorite in general, the trauma really upset me and I didn't like it. Then I read Hot as Haze by Alicia Ray. I gave this 5 stars. This is a literal god and goddess, Hades and Persephone retelling, and the opening scene is her landing in his lap in the underworld. She doesn't know how she got here. He doesn't know how she got here. And it is their romance as a novella. I thought it was sweet. I enjoyed that he was so grumpy and trying to avoid her, and she was literal sunshine. And I really liked their dynamic. I liked the storyline, and I liked the way that she twisted things to be a retelling. I really thought she did a good job. I've heard good things about Alicia Ray, and this is my first book by her and will not be my last. And I read The Mass Minotaur by Chase Faraday. I gave this book 4 stars. This is a sapphic novella. It's kind of like a Zorro retelling. So The Mass Minotaur is a actual literal minotaur, a paranormal creature, who is stopping robberies from happening during the night, and the main character has a confectionery shop, and she has a marriage of convenience with her wife, and they don't really have a great relationship. When she finds out about the Mass Minotaur, she is fascinated. An interesting thing about this book is it's really short, and the first version is the explicit version, and then there's a clean version after, so you can read either one depending on what you would like. There's only one explicit scene, so it's not a lot anyways, but the author gave you both options, so read which one you want. Then I read Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts Volume 1. This is a manga. I gave it 4 stars. He is a large beast, and she is a pretty young girl. I think that kind of interfered with my enjoyment a little bit, although that is pretty common for manga. The beasts and the humans are not really at peace, and the humans have to give a sacrifice every year. The king of beasts kills the human, and we wait for another sacrifice. Things ended with a misunderstanding and a little bit of a cliffhanger, and the king is trying to make her his queen, and the other beast kind are not okay with it and plan on continuing the series at some point. Then lastly, I read Deal with the Demon by Chase Faraday. I gave this 4 stars. It was a reread for me. This was the group book for the Love in the Night readathon, which is what most of the last several books that I read were for the paranormal readathon. Deal with the Demon is a novella about a demon who is sent to serve a human while she gets a success, and the human is a single mom of 2 teenagers, and she asks the demon to basically be her house husband while she works night shift, and so he cooks and cleans and takes care of her children, and they fall in love, and it's so sweet. It's so sweet, and I was like really emotionally invested this time around, and I just love them. That's it. That's all the books that I read in May. I enjoyed my reading. I broke my reading slump that happened through March and April, and I'm happy to be back in a good reading place. Let me know if you read anything super amazing. I would love to hear about it. Let me know if you read any of these books. I always enjoy chatting books, and if you want to talk spoilers, you're always free to message me on Instagram. I really do enjoy talking spoilers about books that we have both read, so feel free to do that. Thank you so much for watching. As always, bye.